Mason Greenwood was a rising star who made his debut at 17 and was considered the best player Manchester United's academy had produced in decades. All that changed in early 2022 when he was arrested after images, video and audio were posted on Instagram.
The 20-year-old forward has spent 4 years at Manchester United, but the club moved quickly to suspend him after multiple allegations were published on an Instagram account.
Though the charges were dropped, many questions remain. What really happened? Will Greenwood ever play professional football again? And how did we get here? At the beginning of 2022, as far as the public knew, Greenwood's life was going well. Despite the disruption and chaos at his club, he had secured a position in the first team and was being praised for his performances and his goals. But on the morning of Sunday, January 30th, posts appeared on his partner's Instagram with the caption, "To everyone who wants to know what Mason Greenwood actually does to me," including pictures and a brief video of injuries and around a minute of audio. These were shared across social media, and Greenwood was arrested on suspicion of rape and assault. The police held him for 48 hours, the maximum allowed, before re-arresting him on suspicion of sexual assault and making death threats, eventually releasing him on bail the following day. While Greenwood was in jail, the woman's father gave a statement to the media, acknowledging she'd spoken to the police and saying she is devastated because she didn't want it released, and that she has told us her phone has been hacked. Over the following months, Greenwood was suspended by the club, sponsors suspended or cancelled their contracts with him, and the police investigated. Newspaper reports claimed that Greenwood and the young woman accusing him were in contact, had begun following each other on social media again, and were meeting up in person. On October 15th, Greenwood was arrested again on suspicion of breaching his bail conditions, and he was charged with attempted rape, assault, and controlling and coercive behaviour. Then, on February 2nd, 2023, exactly a year to the day that he was released from custody after his initial arrest, the charges were dropped. Since then, it has emerged that Greenwood and the young woman are engaged to be married and recently had a child together, a child who would have been conceived at almost the exact time Mason was charged. As so often happens, public opinion has been split into two opposing camps. Either he's a violent bastard, or she's a lying bitch. As always, when we're presented with a binary choice, we should ask whether both or neither of these things are true. In a time of high-tech surveillance states, corrupt and often bigoted police, and widespread media fakery, the presumption of innocence is more important than ever. So why do so many people believe so strongly that Mason is guilty? All we have seen is brief snippets of possible evidence. Greenwood himself does not appear in any of the photos or the video, and while it is certainly his voice on the audio, it is just as certain that the audio clip is edited out of a longer recording. There are three obvious possibilities. 1. The media posted to Instagram is authentic. 2. The media posted is a staging or reconstruction of real events. This would mean Greenwood is guilty, at least of something. 3. The media posted is not authentic, or is deliberately misrepresentative of real events. Perhaps some of the injuries are real, but occurred another way. Perhaps the audio is not what many have assumed it to be. Or 4. Some mixture of the above. Very few people know the truth, but battle lines have been drawn, emotional barriers constructed, and allegiances formed. Most of this happened at the provocation of major news media and social media organisations, owned by giant corporations who don't care whether or not a young woman in Manchester was assaulted, or a young man falsely accused. When offered the possibility of Greenwood's innocence, those who believe in his guilt typically offer up one of two responses. We've all heard the tapes, and imagine if it was your mother, daughter, or sister. Both of these responses, and the more sophisticated variations on them used by news media outlets, lack empathy or any consideration of the presumption of innocence. Indeed, both of these responses reveal underlying prejudices. With the first, the use of "we" implies everyone interprets the audio the same way, and no other interpretation is possible. This is a lie. The use of tapes, when there are no tapes, this isn't Watergate, there is around a minute of digital audio, is an exaggeration. Why would people lie and exaggerate, inventing more evidence in their mind than they have actually heard, unless they are prejudiced? The second response is even worse, because if you care about your female relatives, then why would you want to imagine them suffering domestic and sexual violence? This speaks to an underlying misogyny in many of the people claiming to be on the side of the alleged victim. Furthermore, it aims to provoke a knee-jerk response of anger at a misogynistic fantasy, which is then misdirected onto Greenwood and a presumption of guilt. It's simply a stupid, manipulative, nasty argument. Perhaps even worse, it assumes that women are the only people who suffer these crimes, and men are the only perpetrators, which overlooks both the suffering of the majority of victims and the culpability of the majority of perpetrators. When you consider that women can assault women, men can assault men, women can assault men, people of other genders can both assault and be assaulted by both men and women, this assumption, and the popular narrative around it, reveals itself to be disgustingly prejudiced and often hateful. Everyone counts, or no one does. But if you read news and social media, this assumption is almost omnipresent. The Greenwood story has been presented in typical gender war fashion: men versus women, Mason versus cannot be named for legal reasons. This is why, when the charges were dropped, many people turned on the young woman they supposedly supported, accusing her of taking a payoff and dropping the charges. This shows not only astonishing ignorance of how the criminal justice system works, but also their underlying misogyny. They don't care about her, they just want to get vengeance against a successful young black man. Instead of women blaming men, or men blaming women, we should be looking at other culprits, including the police. They initially held Greenwood for 3.5 days, clearly trying to force a confession. The reworking of accusations used to re-arrest him without fresh evidence strongly suggests prejudice on their part. While it wasn't reported at the time, the police knew that Greenwood and his partner were meeting up, perhaps had even re-established their prior relationship, but did nothing to stop it until re-arresting him in October. Were they trying to trap Greenwood, watching, and hoping he did something they could use against him? If so, and they truly believed he was dangerous, they too displayed a worrying lack of consideration towards the alleged victim.
Now, an investigation by Channel 4 News has uncovered serious concerns among serving officers at Greater Manchester Police. They've told this programme they're taking unacceptable risks and that dozens of inappropriate and disproportionate arrests are being made every week.
Then, there's the reason the charges were dropped. The statement from the Crown Prosecution Service said that the case was discontinued after new material came to light and key witnesses withdrew. While most people have focused on the key witnesses, what is the new material? almost certainly it is evidence gathered by the defence. When Greenwood was charged in October, the prosecution had to hand over everything they had, the full police case file. This will have included transcripts of interviews and, of course, a copy of the hard drive in the young woman's phone. The time span between the charges being made and being dropped matches the time span for digital forensic analysis. Thus, it seems probable that the new material was evidence from the phone, either the full audio recording or possibly messages between the two of them on the days the crimes supposedly occurred. But wouldn't the CPS have already had this information before they decided whether to bring charges? One possibility is that the police found this evidence, but withheld it from the prosecution. This is illegal. The police aren't allowed to withhold evidence that shows a person is or might be innocent. But they do it. We can also look at the case of Benjamin Mendy, the Manchester City player who was arrested and prosecuted by the same police and prosecutors as Greenwood. He was arrested on August 26, 2021, and immediately charged with 4 counts of rape and 1 of attempted rape. Over the following months, more women made accusations, and he was eventually charged with 8 counts of rape, 1 of attempted rape, and 1 of sexual assault. 2 other men were arrested in connection with the same accusations. Mendy's trial began in August 2022, with Benjamin pleading not guilty on all counts. The month before, one of the other men arrested saw the case against him collapse. His lawyers noted, "Police appeared keen to see our client charged and convicted. They tried on 3 occasions to put a case together against our client, and failed in each attempt." By September, Mendy was found not guilty on one of the rape charges, after the judge directed the jury to a not guilty verdict. In January, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty on most of the charges, while they couldn't come to a verdict on 2 accusations. Although the case was weak, the prosecution insisted on a retrial. At the retrial, in July 2023, Mendy was cleared of those charges as well. In both cases, the majority of media coverage has treated Greenwood and Mendy as though they are guilty, particularly after the cases fell apart. They have taken on the role of prosecutors, seeking to continue to damage these men and run them out of football. For example, The Athletic, owned by the liberal pro-police New York Times Corporation, have published smear articles on both Mendy and Greenwood, citing either anonymous sources or unproven allegations made in court. They produced what is known in the industry as takedown pieces. It is perhaps unsurprising that the writer of the Greenwood piece learned his trade at the Daily Mail, a fascist-leaning tabloid. While the motives of the accusers in the Mendy case might seem obvious, why could Greenwood's girlfriend, and now fiancée and mother to their child, have triggered a similar response from the Manchester police? We do know that Greenwood is no angel, having got into trouble while on England duty in a scandal that publicly humiliated his partner. Given the pre-existing imbalance in their relationship, with Greenwood being far wealthier and more famous, could this have been one of the reasons? As to Manchester police, in both the Mendy and Greenwood cases, they did everything they could to manufacture a prosecution. Aside from the obvious motive, wanting to take down a big fish, it is important to note that they are institutionally racist. Despite this being well known, not a single major media outlet has made the connection. At the time this video was made, Greenwood will not return to Manchester United. When the club put out a statement indicating their intention to bring him back, mentioning evidence and context not in the public domain, there was a vicious backlash. The club did a U-turn and announced Greenwood would be leaving, In the media reaction, the notion that Greenwood might be innocent simply isn't part of the conversation. Is it possible that a young woman, publicly humiliated by her famous boyfriend, sought revenge without realizing what the consequences would be? And that a rabid news media, desperate for a #MeToo success, and an equally rabid and racist police force, hungry for a celebrity scalp, presumed guilt and tried to railroad the case through the system? Is it possible that in doing this, they employed exploitative tactics to manufacture a social media gender war shitstorm, resulting in this poisonous polarization? Is it possible Mason Greenwood is innocent, and the case against him has been driven by prejudice and presumption of guilt? I believe so, but you can decide for yourself. Thank you for watching, and take care.